To make an ornament out of an embroidery, you're going to take and make your little embroidery, and then you are going to go ahead and finish it completely with a drawn thread hem, just like you would any other embroidery that you were finishing as a table runner or a table square or anything like that. The one change you're going to do though is normally I recommend that you pull 3 threads out for your drawn thread hem, but you'll notice for this I'm going to have you pull 4 threads out. It's going to create a little bit more effect, and we need it for stitching the lining on. So once you've got that done, you're going to set that aside. You're going to grab your lining fabric like this. I'm going to set that aside right here. Grab my lining fabric. And I am now going to actually just set this here and use this as a template to cut my lining fabric, because this will be right about perfect. Just make sure not to cut your embroidery, okay? So be careful about that. And it doesn't have to be like super perfect, you know? You can do one side. What I typically do is do one side, again, being very careful not to cut your embroidery. This is just because I'm kind of lazy and I don't want to measure it. So this works almost as well. And what we're going to do then is do that, okay? And we're going to cut the top. Again, just be careful of not cutting your embroidery. Okay, now you have that. What you're going to do next is you're going to set your embroidery and turn it over like this. You're going to make sure that you have the wrong side. This is actually a silk cotton blend. The shiny side is the right side. This is the wrong side. I am now going to press over a hem, press over to the wrong side. And I'm going to just I'm going to do 2 sides first, like this. If you do it this way, you don't have to measure. And you're going to get, with this technique, you're going to get a little bit better, the pieces are going to line up together better if you don't measure. I know that sounds kind of funny. We're so used to measuring everything, but sometimes it's better not to. Now I'm going to set my lining fabric in there. And when my lining fabric looks like it's lined up here and here, kind of along my drawn thread hem border there, more or less, I'm now going to lift up and see, okay, wait, where do I need to push back to do that up here on this side and this side? So I see there, I'm like, ooh, I don't need very much. Maybe a 1/4 of an inch might do it for me. So I'm going to try pressing about a 1/4 of an inch up now, like that. I'm going to lay it back on the ornament, the back of the ornament, back side, and I see, okay, yeah, perfect. I'm getting really close there. Yep, that feels actually quite good. It's okay if it sits even a thread or 2 back, no problems at all there, because you don't want it peeking through. Now I'm going to do that last side, and I'm looking at that going, oh, okay, now I need to maybe press over about 3/8 is what it feels like to me. So I'm going to do that. And I'm just eyeballing this. If it makes you feel more comfortable, go ahead and measure. I'm kind of lazy. So now I've got this piece like this. And now I'm going to show you the next step in just a minute. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually use the drawn thread hem stitch to affix the lining to the back of the ornament. So this is actually the wrong side of your cross stitch embroidery that you've already done a drawn thread hem on. It's like completely finished. But we're going to turn it into an embroidery with this lining. We've pressed up the gold satin that I have here. I'm starting in a corner right here so that you can see me really well. And I have already taken and sunk my thread through so that I don't have a knot there. And now what I'm going to do, I'm just trying to figure out the best angle for the camera here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually come in and grab that bar of stitches right there. You can see that like that, okay? And pull it through just like I would actually for a normal drawn thread hem. But instead of picking up the fabric of the embroidery, I'm now picking up the fabric of the lining like this and taking a little small stitch. Okay? See if I can get that to where you can really see that. Okay? Now, this is why you want the lining fabric set slightly back from the drawn thread hem. And now I'm going to, I just want to make sure you can really see that. I'm picking up another bar like that, and I'm pulling it through, and I'm making my little tiny angled drawn thread hem stitch to take me to the next bar. Now, it's important that you use a sharp needle for this because a lining fabric like this silk cotton is pretty, it's just really delicate and it isn't quite as easy to pierce with a needle. So make sure you use a little bit finer needle. An embroidery needle works great. Let me see if I can just make sure. I just want to make sure everybody can see this really well. So I'm going to come and do another bar like that. Oh, whoops. It'd help if I keep it right there. Oh, there we go. That was a good one. There we go. See, like that? Okay, and I'm pulling that through. Not getting it on the corner. Okay, there we go. Awesome. Now, as soon as I get to there, I'm going to take another little tiny stitch to get me to the next bar. Like that. Okay. I'm going to pull that through. And that is going to anchor that bar. Okay? I am going to continue doing this all the way around on 3 sides only. Okay? 3 sides only. Okay, so now I've hem stitched around this side and this side. And when I get to this side, what I just am going to do now is I'm going to touch up my seam allowance and sort of finesse it. Like you can see right here, it's a little bit off from my fabric. So I'm taking it this side, I opened out, I pressed out my first line and I repressed in a new line like that. That lines up a little bit better. And then I'm going to do it on this side too, as much as I can. It's anchored in over here, so I don't have quite as much room to play with there, but I still have some. So I'm going to use that, and I'm going to just kind of open up my silk lining fabric like that, and give it just a little bit more space. So I'm just kind of like playing with that a little bit. This is kind of the best way to get this to really go in neatly and look really great, is to do 2 sides and then figure out those last 2 sides. That's really how you get kind of a perfect little lining. You've got to kind of adjust as you go. So now I'm going to go ahead and pin those 2 sides, and I am only going to finish this side. I'm going to finish this side until I get to the next step. Okay, so you have hem stitched your lining to your embroidery on all 3 sides. And you've stopped here. You've still got your needle and thread off here, over here, okay? You're just going to set it aside for a minute. You can even sort of, well, I just set it aside. That's probably the easiest way. You've sort of adjusted your lining to make sure that it's nice and lined up for that last pass, that last side that you're going to hem stitch your lining to the embroidery. But the issue here is that a lot of ornaments, when we have an ornament like this, is they're floppy. And it was kind of surprising to me when I went to research online how people finish ornaments to see how many people use things like cardboard and batting and things like that. And I realized that most people weren't aware of a specialty tailoring interfacing because it's very hard to find. That's probably why. That's called double ply crown buckram. Sometimes it's called double ply. This is actually a single ply steam adhesive buckram. This is a woven interfacing that then is very stiff. It has a stiffener applied to it, so it's very stiff. As you can see, it doesn't bend easily. I mean, it's quite stiff, and it has adhesive on one side, so it will steam adhere to pretty much anything you put it on, and so it makes a really awesome interfacing for an ornament. So what you're going to do is, once you get these 3 sides done, you're then going to take a seam gauge and you're going to measure. Again, I know now we're going to measure because this part's important. You don't have any leeway with the buckram because the edges are so crisp and stiff that you can't really like bend it once you get it into the ornament. So you want to make absolutely sure of your measurements before you do that. So right here I measured and I'm coming in at just under 4 inches. So I'm going to go down like almost a 1/4 inch, and I'm going to cut a piece of buckram that is 3 3/4 by 3 3/4. So you want it just a little bit smaller than your piece because we want it to easily slide in. Now I've already cut this piece, and I'm just going to slide it in here like this with the steam adhesive part towards your embroidery. Because what will happen, and we're just going to basically pop that in there like a little, almost like putting a letter in an envelope, very carefully. We're going to pop it in there, and what that's going to do is the steam side is going to actually adhere to your embroidery and make it look really nice and flat and perfectly finished. And then you're going to finish sewing this doing the drawn thread hem stitch on this last side. So to put steam adhesive in, you do need to use a fair amount of steam, and I would recommend that you do it from the back side. I am now going to steam this in. What I'd recommend first is that you don't steam it too much. Now see how that's curling up a little bit like that? That is totally normal. What we'll do is we'll get that in first, and see it's already starting to adhere slightly to my embroidery, which is going to make this really nice. It's going to make it look really nice and crisp on all my edges. But it is going to want to curl a little bit. So I just gave it a little light steam. I'm going to now finish this last row of stitching, and then I'm at the last time too, I'm going to put a loop in, whatever loop I want for my ornament, whether I want that to be in this position for a square ornament, or whether I want it to be over here as for a diamond ornament. I'll set my loop in there and stitch that in place when I'm finishing up. For this ornament, I'm actually just using some of the DMC floss braided and basically just a really simple little braid loop. I thought that would just look really nice. So I'll stitch that in a minute. But when I'm all done, what I'm going to do is give it a very good thorough press, and then I'm going to put it under a couple of books just overnight, and that will help set that canvas, that buckram, that really nice interfacing that's got so much good stability.